So it's my great pleasure to introduce you to, or to reacquaint you with, Dr. Henry DePhillips. As you probably know, he graduated from Trinity in 1982 with a degree in biochemistry and has gone on to pursue an inspiring career in medicine in senior executive positions since that time. In the past 6 months that I've been corresponding with Dr. DePhillips about today's visit, I've come to refer to him as Henry the Son. As you may have surmised, he is indeed the son of our very own, recently retired, but still a daily sight and clement, physical chemistry professor Henry DePhillips, who of course has become Henry the Dad. So Henry the Son is a graduate of Hahnemann University School of Medicine, and he has deep expertise in the practice of medicine, medical management, health informatics, and how to use informatics to best influence personal and clinical decision-making. At Teladoc, he's responsible for the overall delivery of high-quality clinical care to Teladoc patients, as well as the supervision and expansion of Teladoc's physician network. Prior to joining Teladoc, he was Senior Medical Director at Independence Blue Cross of Pennsylvania, and later held positions as Chief Medical Officer at MedDecision, MedM, PDR Network, and Audax Health. Dr. DePhillips was also the head of business development in North America for McKinsey's International Health Systems Institute. Our challenge to him today was to talk about his work in relation to the theme for this lecture series, Science for the Greater Good. Please join me in welcoming back to campus Dr. Henry DePhillips.
So good afternoon. Can everybody hear me okay? Anybody in the back? So everything that Allison just read, I had to make up because the other speakers had such great credentials. I figured I'd better. So none of it's real. Just kidding. This hour is your hour. It's not my hour. So I put together a couple of speaking points and I talked to Allison, and I think the way that might be the most helpful for everyone here is for me to talk a little bit about what I've done, which I've had a blast with, but more importantly, some of life's lessons that I've learned along the way that I hope to share with you so that each of you in the room can learn them sooner, faster, better, and therefore you'll be much smarter than I am by the time you get to where I am, because learning it the hard way, it just takes time. You'll find I walk around a little bit, a lot actually, but I have to keep coming back to get that. So here are the questions that I've been asked to answer today. Number one, how is science used for the greater good? Number two, how does science contribute to society, which is about my favorite question. And then, importantly for this discussion, how are Trinity alum leaders in this realm? That may be one of the tougher ones. As I mentioned before, I added in myself one additional question, and that is, what have we learned along the way? And I think that's going to be a big focus of today. And then my wife, Catherine, when she heard about this talk, said to me, there's another question that you're missing completely. And I said, what's that? She said, Henry, there's a question that science has been asking for decades now, and you have to ask the question of the group. So I said, okay. What does the fox say? If anybody knows the answer, I'm open. My journey is unusual. It sounds impressive, it's been a little schizophrenic, it's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride. It's certainly not go to medical school, be a doctor for the rest of your life and retire somewhere. That's not what I did. I did go to medical school. So from the traditional to the unexpected, and there's a message here. I started out on a very traditional path, certain major, certain application process, certain medical school, and I got a great medical education. And then a couple of things happened along the way to change the trajectory. One of the things that's constant is that the pace of change is increasing over time. That will always be the case in our lifetimes. And what you'll see in my career path is a reflection of that. And all I can tell you is, if you feel a little tired at the end of this discussion, wait until you see in your own career path. Because the average longevity for everyone sitting in this room that's an undergraduate is probably 3 to 5 years in any one career position. And that will probably even shorten further as time goes on. By the way, my comments will be my own. Some of them will not be popular. If you don't like my comments, don't dislike me, just think about the comment. I'd like to express some gratitude. Is there anyone in the room who knows Latin? So what does that first thing mean?
I have absolutely no idea.
That's not the correct translation. No Latin speakers in the room? You got one word right, only. That's good.
In God, glory in God.
Glory is God's only. That's pretty good. That's very close. So what the first line says is, to God alone goes the glory. So I'm here through the grace of God. Nothing that I did. I've been put in this place. Obviously, I'm very grateful to my family, specifically my dad, who's here. Allison for reaching out to me. I have no, when you graduate college and then you don't set foot on campus for 30 years, you always wonder what exactly the reason is why they call you and say, will you come back? And you, the Trinity community, without you guys, I wouldn't be here. So I'm very grateful that you chose to spend this hour here, and I'll try to make it worth your while. I want to dedicate this conversation to somebody who's a tremendous friend, has been a great mentor, has been a great role model, and the thing that's coolest about this person is that he is well liked by everyone he meets. And if you'll please help me to acknowledge the original Henry DePhillips. I'm just a cheap knockoff. Sorry about the noise. Let me see if I can get that to stop. So, lesson number one along the way. If you wind up going to a college where your father's a professor, it's probably a good idea to get decent grades. That was my first life lesson. So, I think if there were a theme behind today's discussion that I'm a big picture person, and I think it's important for each of you to think big picture. We'll talk about some details, but the big picture is very important. This is the most important thing I'm going to talk about today, and that is think differently. Think differently. When I look at stuff, I just seem to have the ability to see things differently and see things that other people may not see. And that can be a gift, it can be a curse. In my case, I've kind of leveraged it, I think, in a positive direction. But all the people on here, in the back you may not recognize or see all of them, but every single person on that slide was thought to be totally nuts in their day, and they contributed to society in a huge way, partly as a result of just thinking differently. So let me give you some examples of that. At my talks, we have ground rules. I'm sure this is totally foreign to you. Notice I'm not wearing a tie. No offense to those who have a tie, including my dad, by the way. No disrespect intended. But I find that my circulation to my brain goes down when I type in my top button, and I can't think very well, or even stand up. So I don't wear a tie. If you have one on, feel free to loosen it. You'll probably be a better listener. Cell phones and PDAs. How many people in the room have one of these? I suspect everyone. Go ahead and show me. Show me your device. Let's see what you got. I have a Samsung Galaxy 4. What do you get? iPhone? Okay, as you go. That's good. It's popular. So, there's a rule about these things, right? And I'm sure in most of your classes, if this goes off, something gets thrown at you, like a piece of chalk or something. Well, at least in my day it was chalk. Now it's probably an instrument. The rule in my situation is I would like everyone in the room to keep this on and keep it active. It would be respectful if you made it so it doesn't make noise, so I set mine to vibrate. But you have my complete permission to send 3 texts, 3 emails, 3 postings on Facebook, 3 tweets, during the course of my conversation, because what you're going to find is networking is critically important, and multitasking is critically important. So what I'm saying, I think is pretty important. I think you're all here for the food anyway, so I get that. I'm okay with that. But you need to keep in touch with the outside world. And in the worst example, but a good example is, if 911, 9/11 happened again while I was talking, you should know about it before I'm done talking. Things happen, and you just need to be connected. So that's the cell phone PDA thing. Networking and multitasking I talked about. Let's move on. So lesson 2 is, the joke's on you. There's really no ground rules at all. Ground rules are whatever you allow. If somebody says drive under 55 miles an hour, you have a choice. You can drive at 55, or you can drive like most people in Connecticut do at 75. Example, America's biggest lie, 4 words. Anybody know what it is? I'll give you a great example of this when you figure out what it is. No texting while driving. 40% of America texts while driving, so I'm not sure where that ground rule came from, but obviously 40% of people don't follow that ground rule. So just this past week, in thinking about this talk, I was driving, I live in Nashville, Tennessee, just south of Nashville, and I was driving down the road, and it's one of those roads that's separated by an island and has curves and all that kind of stuff. And 2 things happened on that ride from there to my house, my farm. The first is that the person in front of me was texting so aggressively that they actually crashed into the curb on the left side of the lane. It was really impressive. And the second thing that happened that was scary actually was we a lot of country two lanes, 50, 60 miles an hour down these country two lanes. This person was going around a curve in front of me, and they were kind of doing this, and so I knew either they were drunk or texting, and at 10 in the morning it's usually texting, not drunk anymore. And by the time we finished the curve, they were squarely in the oncoming lane. They were all the way over the yellow line in the oncoming lane going in the same direction. So anyway, ground rules that you allow. So here's my journey. I'm just going to use this as an example. So this was, I was sitting where you are when that picture was taken. And thank you for coming up with the yearbook stuff. I'm embarrassed to tell you, not only have I not set foot on campus in some number of years, I don't even know where my yearbook is anymore. But they're archived digitally now, so I use technology to find this. So that's what I look like in 82. Anybody recognize the person I'm standing next to? So if you go on LinkedIn, which you're welcome to do while I'm talking, here's my profile. So I'm just going to give you the progression. So I graduated Trinity. And by the way, I don't usually do this during these talks, but I will because we're here at Trinity, and many of you are undergrads. Here's my schizophrenic Trinity pathway. I entered as a freshman as a math major, and I was on my way to the Air Force. In fact, I was so on my way to the Air Force that I was sitting across a table from the recruiter, and I had the 8-year commitment agreement sitting in front of me on the table. And I was about to sign it. And something happened that this gentleman said, you know, wait 24 hours. If you still feel the same way, come back and sign it tomorrow. I said, okay, thanks. As you probably already know, 24 hours went by, I rethought the decision and literally changed the course of my life by not signing that at that very moment. And I give that recruiter a lot of credit. I don't know if that same thing would happen today. Sophomore year, I declared economics as my major and was on my way to business school. Thought it was a good idea. Finished courses through junior year. By the end of my sophomore year for economics, had a blast. And then it wasn't until junior year that I declared a science major and decided I wanted to go to medical school. And I think the only reason I wound up in medical school is because that's the year that you have to decide what you want to do after college. I couldn't change my mind one more time between junior and senior year. So I wound up in medical school. So I'd love to say that this was a very well-planned, very carefully orchestrated thing, but the bottom line is it wasn't. And so the message there is, if you're just feeling your way along, just decide what feels right and go with the flow. And if you want to make a change, make a change. We're going to talk a lot about that. Went to medical school, practiced in family and community medicine for 10 years, delivered 100 babies, made house calls, had a blast in practice, got to lecture to other docs around the country. And I got to tell you, private practice was really a good time. After 10 years, I just got something switched in my brain. It was time for a change, and I just decided to make a change. So I went to work in the health insurance industry, figuring somebody from the good side had to go to the dark side and make it right, so I tried to do that. After 8 years of banging my head against the wall, learned a lot about the finance of healthcare, which, if you don't know about the finance of healthcare, it's a very interesting study. It's about the most broken business model you'll ever see. Don't have to tell you that, you probably already know. After 8 years of that, I decided to move into healthcare information technology. That's where I am today, and I'm going to stay. However, the schizophrenia continued. I think I've been with 5 companies, partly through mergers and acquisitions, partly my own decision in the last 9 years. Did clinical systems for health plans across the country, did clinical systems for the pharmaceutical industry, did clinical systems for physician practices. Spent 2.5 years at a consumer-facing company using social networking techniques to engage people in their own healthcare. That was a blast. I'll talk about that in a moment. And spent a year at McKinsey and the International Health Systems Institute. I love that most students these days spend a year or a semester abroad. I think that's awesome. Gives you perspective on the U.S. And if you study healthcare overseas, it'll give you a real perspective on the U.S. healthcare system. And I don't mean that as a compliment. And then wound up 6 months ago, literally, I started at Teladoc, and you'll find out in a moment what Teladoc does. So I shared a career path with you so that you can get an idea of what my journey has been like. Not traditional by any stretch. So if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you'll quickly come to the conclusion that I have career ADD, which is probably true. And then you can interpret it one of 2 ways. Either A, I can't hold down a job, which I wouldn't fault you for believing that. Or B, I finally figured out a way to use existing technology to literally help millions of people get the care they need that's affordable and convenient. And that's what I'm doing today, and that's where I am today, it's where my head is today. So the question is, how did I get from Trinity to that? And that's what we're going to talk about. Let me show you a 2-minute video about our business. This is the company that I work for today.
Did you know that in the course of a year, you'll see your doctor close to 3 times for one of these typical conditions? And for your kids, almost 4 times. So what do you do about it? You normally have 3 options. The first thing you should do is call your primary care physician. But what if getting an appointment takes too long? Or even worse, what if traveling makes it impossible? You could head to an urgent care clinic, but do you want to spend $150 to wait in a room that might be full of sick people? And then there's the emergency room, but that would cost $750. And the waiting room might be full of really sick people. Wouldn't it be great if treatment could be simple? That's what Teladoc is for. This is how easy it is to use. First, sign up and fill out some health info. When one of these strikes and your doctor is unavailable, go online or call Teladoc to request a consultation with a U.S. board certified doctor. Get on a call or video chat with your doctor who is licensed in your state. Explain every detail of your issue. There's no rush, take as long as you need. The doctor will listen carefully. And when enough details are given, we'll diagnose what you have. A prescription is sent to your local pharmacy if necessary. All of this was done in less than an hour. Average amount of practice experience of Teladoc doctors, 15 years. Average time it takes to get a call back from a Teladoc doctor for the quality care you need, 22 minutes. Average cost to get quality care from a Teladoc doctor, $38 or less. 91% of all medical issues resolved. 97% of customers satisfied. Who said getting quality care has to be complicated? Try it once. You'll love it. Go to teladoc.com to get started.
Sounds simple, right? Use the phone, use the PDA, get a hold of a doctor when you can't otherwise go somewhere, it costs less, it's quicker, more efficient, right? So let's talk about the journey a little bit. I'm going to ask a few questions, and I'll probably walk around a little bit too. So remember I talked to you before about when I look at things just a little bit differently. So I'm going to try to get you to think outside the box just a little bit. In my thinking, there's really 2 ways to generate income in America. One is to create value for people. If you create value for people, then you're able to take a portion of that value home at the end of the day. And that's how I like to think about the way I generate income. If you're going to create value for people, it's probably going to need to be mission-based, meaning there has to be some greater good to it. And it also needs to be focused. You can't boil the ocean. You know, in my business, I hear entrepreneur CEOs all the time say things like, this company is going to change the way healthcare is practiced in America. And as soon as I hear those words, I run as quickly as I can. It is a $3 trillion dinosaur, and it is not going to be changed overnight. So the key is to focus on a piece, find something that's broken, fix the piece. You don't need a very big percentage of $3 trillion to have a good payday at the end of the day. And then the other way to generate income is everything else. Things that don't create value for people, and I won't go into what those are because I don't want to offend anybody, but I think you understand sort of the mission base. So here's my journey. When I started as a family practice resident years ago, I had a practice of 400 patients. I then went into private practice on my own and built a practice that ultimately had about 4,000 patients in it, so I was able to touch that many lives. When I went to the health insurance plan, which was in Independence Blue Cross in Philadelphia, we had just shy of 4 million patients that we were responsible for the care of. So I thought, wow, that's a pretty good step up. And then when I went into technology, first serving the entire